Welcome, everybody. To the inaugural dinner of Bonei Olam of Flatbush. I don't know whether you realize it or not, but you are doing an unbelievable thing by having come here. You are now part of a movement that has taken foot in Klal Yisrael that is unprecedented and unparalleled. You can help someone else have a child. This was unthinkable a mere 20 years ago. It was much more difficult 15 years ago. But it is very, very possible today. Advances have been made in medical technology that didn't exist just a few years ago. For some reason, HaKadosh Baruch Hu put it in the Bria that in our door, advances have been made that people that you know, or perhaps that you knew, who did not have children, you know those people. Had they lived today, had they been the right age today, they could very well have had children. I lived in the world of infertility before Bonei Olam. And let me tell you, that was a very lonely and confusing world. There was no one to talk to. You don't talk to your parents. You don't talk to your in-laws. You don't talk to your friends. The people you seek out to talk to often didn't know. And in our community, the question that you get asked is different from the question that I got asked where I worked. In our community, the question that I was often asked, especially when I moved into a new neighborhood, this is the question that they asked me in passing conversation. How many kids do you have? Or, where do you send your children to school? What do you say? I heard that question many times. And there's a certain awkwardness. And sometimes you hope the conversation passes to something else or somebody else comes. But more often than not, there's a silence, there's an awkwardness, there's an embarrassment. And I know how I felt, and as countless people still feel today. You sort of look down and you say, we don't have children. One time, in a way that I will never forget. And the truth is, I never, ever went over to him to thank him. Because there was that awkward question that came up, and without missing a beat, after he had asked me, how many children do you have? And there was that awkward silence, and I said, we don't have children. He looked me in the face, and you know what he said? He said 3 powerful words I will never forget. He said to me without missing a beat, in Meretz Hashem you will. I've been asked that question countless times, and no one ever told me, Emet Hashem, you will. I can't describe to you how I felt that because the conversation moved, but I was still listening to those words. Emet Hashem, you will. Wow. Emet Hashem, you will. I actually stood up erect for a minute. My whole essence changed. That is what we are here tonight. By coming here tonight, by participating tonight, by contributing tonight, you are saying to these childless couples, Emet Hashem, you will. I just want to share one story with you, if I may. I heard this story many years ago, but I'd like to share it with you because I think it's very appropriate. It's a story that happened at the turn of the century. At the turn of the century in New York Harbor, a Yid came from Europe on one of those ships on which he traveled for weeks. An immigrant with his one peculiar, as he passes the Statue of Liberty, and he goes to Ellis Island, And the ship pulls up to New York Harbor, and he looks out from the deck. And he has one cousin who arranged for him to come to the United States, to come to the Golden Medina, America. And he looks out, and his cousin said, I'll meet you at the dock. And he looks out, and there are thousands of people on the dock. And he hasn't seen this cousin for many years. So he goes out, and he looks, but he doesn't even know what his cousin might look like. So he waits an hour and a half, and the crowd dissipates. And there's no longer 1,000 people, there's about 150 people, 200 people. So he goes around, and he's screaming at the top of his voice for his cousin. He says, Chaim! Chaim! He's screaming. And nobody steps forward. One other man comes to him and says, can I help him? He says, yes, I have a cousin, he arranged for me to come. He said he'd meet me at the dock. I don't know who he is, I don't even know what he looks like. He says, he gave me this zettel, he sent me something by mail. And the guy sees that there's a name, but there's also a number. He says, this is a telephone number. This is a telephone number. He says, probably in the shtetl, who knows how many telephones there were. There probably weren't very many telephones. So he schleps him over, he says, here, you dial this number. So he dials the number, and he's screaming into the phone, Chaim, Chaim, Chaim. The other fellow sees that he hasn't gotten through, so he says, give me the receiver. And he listens in. And he looks to this immigrant from Europe, and he says, Yid, als ich wilt Chaim, müsst ihr heranwerfen an Nickel. Rabbi say, in a few short days, every single one of us are going to be standing in a shul somewhere in Flatbush or somewhere else in the world. And we're going to say, Zochreni l'chaim. We're going to scream, Melechot b'chaim. Because when we say l'chaim, man cholechem chaim, and schreib v'chaim, chaim. And maybe what we will hear, as the Vils chaim, mistaran varfen an nickel. You have to make a contribution. And what better organization, what better movement to contribute those hard-earned dollars to a movement that seeks out Chaim, like Bonei Olam. And I'm not even talking about those unborn babies, those babies waiting to be born. I am talking about those childless couples. Yes, those childless couples who are zerbrochen, who are depressed, who look you the other way, who look aside. As Chazal say, Misha ein lo bonam choshev kameis. You are here to give them chiyas. Tonight, you will hear about the work of Bonei Olam and its incredible work. You will be inspired, you will be moved, and you realize how coming here tonight is so important and how much more we could do if we worked together.